The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast. Here is the King of Podcasts.
What I want to understand is why is it that Universal Music Group, which has decided to pull all music from their artists off the TikTok platform today, or that TikTok is not paying you enough, why can't we do the same thing to the damn radio stations? I'd love to know that, because I honestly think you're going after TikTok, of course, because they have the most, audience out there with billions of people on the platform on a regular basis. I'm one of them. I get it. But what you're doing is now you're saying to the president, okay, so there's an issue with people saying, all right, why is it that TikTok is not paying enough for the music to be on the platform? They're not even playing the full songs. They're playing clips. And on top of that, if you, as Universal Music Group, you're able to put music up there, music videos, whatever you want. And you do that. I just don't like the fact that negotiations decide to go and fall apart. Because Universal Music wants to go after the biggest fish in the pond, where the biggest opportunity for revenue is where they are. The record labels are a little bit misfounded in where they're trying to go. They don't want to get enough off of the radio stations because the radio stations actually play the full-length songs. And by the way, they need Universal Music Group and their artists. Imagine the likes if any pop radio station right now in the country, in the USA, could not play Taylor Swift, Drake, Ariana Grande, or Lady Gaga. What would we be left with? Let me put it to you like this. I'll go a little step further. If I just want to go into what the charts say and what labels Universal Music Group owns, let's go and talk about that part and who they own. Because I don't know all their labels, but we'll go through them. Among the labels and brands they own, Abbey Road, Capitol, Decca, Def Jam, EMI, Interscope, Geffen A&M, Island, Polydor, Republic, and Virgin, among others that they own. All right? They own all those. And of course, Capitol Records has their own set of other labels. Blue Note, Cash Money Records is under them. Casablanca Records. Who else do I see that is familiar with me? Island Records they own. MCA Nashville, Mercury, Motown, Polygram. Man, they own everything, honestly. Republic Records, Uptown Records, Verve Label Group, and Young Money. Like, there's a lot that they own. So many artists that are under their brand as well. And so if I looked at just what we just said right there, there are so many artists that will be affected by this if their songs were taken away. Okay? Just of what I'm reading right now, imagine Olivia Rodrigo also on that list, off. Let's say, who else do I have here? Let's say that Sabrina Carpenter, gone. Nicki Minaj, gone. Right? Think about this. I'm looking at the other names that I have. Jonas Brothers, gone. Right? I mean, these are names that are pretty big on the list here. Troye Sivan, out. Renee Rapp, out. Jungkook, out. That's not good. This is just across the board we're looking at right now of the names that we see, right? As we said, Drake. That's a lot of names in there that you don't want to go and see them just drop off. And the thing is that TikTok could also make other artists become popular. I mean, the thing is that you're not going to lose so much if you're TikTok by having those artists off. Like, it is a big chunk. There's a lot of artists right now that are used constantly in reference on TikTok. I mean, there's a lot of Swiftie fans out there. The Swifties are all over that platform. Same thing goes for Ariana Grande fans. Listen, the Yes and Dance Challenge, that gets muted now. Drake, Everybody gets, he gets either good or bad publicity up there as well. Not anymore. But now things need to happen where we're in a strike, almost. Basically, we're like in a labor union position. Same thing as before. Let's get into the story itself and explain what happens here right now. First of all, let's go to where things are going. I want to get the main story that we have of this. We will start with Rolling Stone. And they say that the likes of Taylor Swift, Olivia Rodrigo songs are vanishing from TikTok as licensing battle with Universal Music Group heats up. Universal Music Group is the biggest music company on the planet. They have failed to renew a licensing deal with TikTok and amid a dispute over artist compensation, security, and the use of AI. This story broke today, and it broke yesterday, but the real shit hit the fan today. Like, people were really realizing what's going on right now because the music finally started getting taken down. This afternoon, as I'm recording this, I'm getting ready to record the program, I see notes on X. Olivia Rodrigo's music dropped. Taylor Swift's music dropped. Ariana Grande's music dropped. Lady Gaga's music dropped. And it just was one after the other. Now, here's what we got. The story is a day after Universal Music Group threatened to stop licensing its music, songs began vanishing from the social media platform. The removal started gradually going away late Wednesday evening. Official versions of UMGU own recordings of Cruel Summer by Taylor Swift, Get 'Em Back by Olivia Rodrigo, Lana Del Rey's Let the Light In no longer appeared in search results, and then videos featuring UMG songs, such as a Kylie Jenner post to Del Rey's Cherry, Dwayne The Rock Johnson's video that was soundtrack to Rick Ross's Hustlin', were muted. The videos now have a prompt at the bottom noting the sound was removed due to copyright restrictions. And because of the fact that certain artists we're not hearing from right now, but you know what is like with TikTok, some songs just might find their way back up into the ether of popularity again. So they're talking about now that some of Swift's own videos that originally featured songs like Hits Different have now been muted. Several of Justin Bieber's videos on this page, including a live performance of his song Yummy, are now gone. So there's been a tense year of negotiations between Universal Music Group and TikTok over the company's differing views on what constitutes a fair deal for use of the record company's music on the platform. But reminder, we're not even talking about the full-length songs. Not even the full length. 15, 30-second clips. But this is enough for them to go ahead and say, well, no, they're not even playing the whole songs. But even just a little bit of that is a copyright violation. So there was an open letter that posted Tuesday night that the prior licensing deal with TikTok was set to expire on Wednesday, and talks over a new deal had reached an impasse. Some of the artists that are also included in this list include Billie Eilish, Kendrick Lamar, and Daddy Yankee, and that Universal Music Group was making a stand, quote, for the creative and commercial value of music. I have the open letter right now. We'll go ahead and take a quick read to that right now as we do. So, in our contract renewal discussions, we've been pressing on three critical issues: appropriate compensation for our artists and songwriters, protecting human artists from the harmful effects of AI, and online safety for TikTok's users. So they have an artist-centric initiative designed to update streaming's remuneration model and better reward artists for the value they deliver to platforms. Now, since the inception, we're proud that this initiative has been received so positively and taken up by a range of partners, including the largest music platform in the world. We've moved aggressively to embrace the promise of AI while fighting to ensure artists' rights and interests are protected now and far into the future. And we've engaged a number of our platform partners to try to drive positive change for the users and, by extension, our artists, addressing online safety issues, recognizing the industry leader as the music's broader impact on health and wellness. With respect to the issue of artist and songwriter compensation, TikTok proposed paying our artists and songwriters at a rate that's a fraction of the rate similarly situated major social platforms pay. As indicate, now here's the thing. They're doing it here to make a point. When Spotify was giving issues about the rate of how they were paying, are you going to tell me that people are going to go ahead and say for Spotify, you're going to take all those songs off the platform? And then what happens? That's a pretty bullshit thing they're going to do right now. Now, here's the other thing that's very interesting in this open letter. An indication of how little TikTok compensates artists and songwriters, despite its massive and growing user base, rapidly rising advertising revenue, and increasing reliance on music-based content. See, the problem is now is that TikTok is adding a lot more advertising. They are bulking it up now more than ever. The TikTok shops are rampant and everywhere. Every third TikTok video you watch is an ad. We know that. And of course, according to the Universal Music Group, TikTok accounts for only about 1% of our total revenue. One more time. Accounts for only about 1% of our total revenue. Ultimately, TikTok is trying to build a music-based business without paying fair value for the music. Yeah. I mean, TikTok hasn't gone to the point where they're allowing music videos completely to go up there. I mean, you could, but not enough people have been uploading up there yet. And, there's other platforms they have. So if Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube, they I guess they pay better rates. They want TikTok to go and follow suit. They also mentioned that TikTok is allowing the platform to be flooded with AI-generated recordings. But what are you going to do about that? People are just kind of like laughing about the AI-generated recordings. I mean, TikTok needs to go ahead and designate when those songs are AI recorded. That might be something that needs to be tagged with so that people are not getting confused. TikTok makes a little effort to deal with the vast amounts of content on its platform that infringe on our artists' music and has offered no meaningful solutions to the rising tide of content adjacency issues, let alone the tidal wave of hate speech, bigotry, bullying, and harassment on the platform. So they also want to go ahead and bully the company into changing their ways about how people are being handled on social media. Okay, but what do you want them to do? You want them to be hall monitors? It's social media. Don't worry about this other part. See, this is the part where I don't get where Universal Music is going at. Listen, you want to worry about how people are consuming the platform. That's not your problem. You're supplying the music there. Okay? You don't have to supply the music. You can go somewhere else. You could do that. But you need them just as much as they need you. Because TikTok just happens to be a driver of music taste, a driver of new music, and a driver of music popularity. We see the power that it has. I mean, that we do. The music labels, the record labels are all worried about the fact that, okay, well, they have to go and, get their catalogs for their artists sold to try to make so much money on that. And then interpolate and reuse and repurpose. Then they said that when TikTok made steps as other platform partners to try to address our issues, they first responded with indifference, then with intimidation. TikTok attempted to bully us into accepting a deal worth less than the previous deal, far less than fair market value, and not reflective of their exponential growth. How did it try to intimidate us? By selectively removing the music of certain of our developing artists while keeping on the platform our audience-driving global stars. Oh, so TikTok says, well, you want to go ahead and use the platform for your use, instead of the users what they want. See, I get what TikTok's doing. They're basically supporting the users, the content creators. Universal is just applying, what will be considered sound effects, or just something that lays into the content that's being done. It does kind of hurt because we do like the music that goes on TikTok because it is part of the appeal. And for TikTok, they have to go and start doing copyright restrictions on certain content. That sucks. And muting certain things that's already been out there, that also sucks. But that's the part that's not good. But TikTok, at their initial beginning, they didn't even have to worry about the music that was being put on there because there's always other music out there they could take that can be repurposed and used for dance challenges or whatever it is. And actually, those days have kind of long gone. There's not many other artists out there that put a song out and all of a sudden we get like a whole dance craze to it. Like in the last, couple of months? I mean, just this year, we had Tate McRae and X's, Sabrina Carpenter and Feather. People were like, there's a lot of girls who were just kind of like, mimicking the words, not a dance to it. And then seeing, Ariana Grande's dance challenge. Like, that's pretty much it. So all those videos of Taylor Swift in concert We're not going to see those anymore. Sabrina Carpenter in concert, we're not going to see those anymore. Are those going to be restricted as well? I mean, the thing is that Universal does need TikTok to get their developing artists out there. But see, here's what happens. See, Universal Music is under threat because those artists they have under contract, well, they don't go anywhere, and they're developing them. They could go on and become independent and go somewhere else, because TikTok is probably of the opinion that their platform is a breeding ground for new artists. Let's just put it like that. It really is. There's a number of new artists I've discovered as a result of TikTok. I don't necessarily look at TikTok for the matter of existing artists that could already get themselves out there in other ways possible because of the money being put out. Okay? I mean, I understand the Universal Music part, but, yeah, they're going to decide to put their foot down here. They're the first ones to do it because they're the biggest. And then TikTok is the biggest platform for music discovery. But Universal, by putting their foot down on this, will the artists get blowback because those artists cannot be heard? Because nobody's going to care about Universal Music Group. Nobody knows about Universal Music Group. They're going to know the artists. What? You mean, so Taylor Swift, you mean your record company took your music down? Ariana Grande, Lady Gaga, Drake, Sabrina Carpenter? You mean it's your record company that took the music down? Why don't you go talk to your record company and put the songs back? What are the artists going to do? Well, we have to do this because, we're trying to make money on this. You're multi-million-dollar artists. Okay. Yeah, sure. There's a lot of things that, you got to pay back to your record label, and maybe you don't make as much as you do unless you go tour. But you're letting the record labels boss you around. Meanwhile, you need to go and push back at them and say, hey, I want my music available to the people. You're doing this to go after TikTok. But, YouTube is where the music videos are going to be found and all that. Facebook tried to do that, failed. And Instagram's not doing that. So what do? Are you going to do the same thing to TikTok Shorts and Instagram Reels? Like, what do you do after that? And then we move along into that it's going to be easy for artists to get replaced on TikTok. There's a lot of other artists out there that people can use, okay? Some songs might go viral, but you know what? They only go viral if the people out there decide to go and use it. If they can use it, if they have access to it. TikTok is more about access. What are they doing to take away your money? That's the part I'm trying to understand. Like, the level that people are using the music on the platform. There are in 15, 30 second, maybe minute long interludes. I don't know how many of them are actually using the full songs. All right. The intent is short form video. So how much are they actually doing? Like, I can understand this part if it was YouTube and we're not paying enough for playing the full music videos or having the full songs loaded up there. Yeah. Or any of the music streaming platform, I understand that part. But why TikTok? Why are we going to this? And the music industry is an uproar about all this. They're talking all about it. TikTok responded back to Universal Music Group. And they said that it is sad and disappointing that Universal Music Group has put their own greed above the interest of their artists and songwriters. Despite Universal's false narrative and rhetoric, the fact that they've chosen to walk away from the powerful support of a platform with well over 1 billion users that serves as a free promotional and discovery tool for their talent. TikTok's been able to reach artists first for agreements with every other label and publisher. Clearly, Universal's self-serving actions are not in the best interest of artists, songwriters, and fans. And that's all they said. That was their response. Short to the point. Universal Music Group, if I want to look at their numbers and how much they've actually put out and how much they've earned, that might be something that we have to go and look at and say, oh, you know what? I wonder how they're doing so far. How much is Universal Music Group making right now in terms of, money? In the 9 months ending September 30th, 2023, Universal Music Group made revenues of, now this is in which market is this, by the way? So they're saying, I guess their overall, they made, what, $7.9 million in revenues? That doesn't make any sense. Hold on a second. Okay, Universal Music Group in 2022, they made 10.34 billion euros. I wish what it is in dollars. That's equivalent to, what is this now? 11,243,000. That's all they made? That's all they made? And by the way, they have debt. As of June 2023, the Universal Music Group has $3.43 billion in debt. That is interesting. Interesting. The largest shareholder of Universal Music Group is Tencent, headquartered in Shenzhen, China. Company's legal headquarters are in the Netherlands. And why does Tencent not sound so familiar? Tencent, man, who are they so familiar for? Hold on a second. One of the highest grossing multimedia companies in the world. So the thing is, the Universal Music Group is held by another company. They don't sound like they're making a whole lot of money either. Their artists supposed to be doing pretty well for what they're doing. But like I said, Universal Music itself, not making much money. And if they're only making $11 million off of $3.43 billion in debt, they're not making enough money. Another company in media failing. So radio and music labels, I guess they're in bed together. The largest music company in the world. They're not making much money. They're not making much at all. That's pitiful. One of the Universal Music Group, I thought it would be making billions of dollars, not $11 million a year. Really? That's pathetic. It's not good. But anyway, those are the two stories we got right there. TikTok, Universal have talked. So Billboard goes more into the story. And this is from Kristen Robinson. And she says that it's too soon to say what impact Universal Music Group's plan to pull all their music will have. But TikTok began running tests in the country where it limited the amount of licensed music some users encountered on the platform to measure and compare the different ways people interact and what impact music that has on their experience. Some of the users went to X to decry the tests. Quote, TikTok really ruining its own app with this sound remove garbage. Another added, what the F is up with TikTok removing like half the sounds? Like I swear, I've seen so many TikToks where the sound has been removed. Some guessed at the time the results were meant to be informing TikTok's licensing strategy, but now the social platform is facing the bigger test. So the Universal Music Group catalog is starting to disappear from TikTok in countries around the world after negotiations with the company soured. The ramifications will reverberate across the entire music business. Universal Music's TikTok license covered its recorded music and publishing holdings, meaning it's not just artists on UMG labels like Republic and Interscope, whose music will soon disappear, but it's also the second largest publisher in the world, holding a 21.16% market share on the pop airplay chart for Billboard in the third quarter of 2023. One out of every 5 artists. And a trove of evergreen catalogs. When the company pulls that catalog, it will pull any of the songwriters it represents contributed to well, impacting many other labels and publishers in the coming weeks. An A&R person from another publisher spoke at the Spotify Songwriter of the Year Grammy event and said that this move is like what the Writers Guild and SAG-AFTRA did to Hollywood. The AMPTP, same idea. The pain will be felt in the short term. The hope is that Universal Music Group's stand will lead to substantive change that benefits everyone in the music industry in the long term. There's an opportunity for the movement to grow too, should the other major music companies, Sony Music and Warner Music Group, as well as indies, decide to pull their catalogs as well when their licensing deals expire. Now, Warner Music Group has already announced a multi-year licensing deal with TikTok last July. Unclear when other licenses will be up for removal. Universal Music affiliated artists and songwriters have releases slated for the coming weeks. Those who just released something new, or those currently trending on TikTok, are all likely to feel the effects. So here's a couple songs that already got a little bit of a hit from this as a result. Murder on the Dance Floor, Sophie Alex Baxter. She's on UMG's Polydor label. And now TikTok made very viral, Made For Me by Muti Long, which got released in September through Def Jam Records. Currently number 2 in the TikTok Top 50 chart. And then other artists are saying that without breaking on TikTok, it's difficult to say what else can cause a big moment to happen for anybody. Oh, well, you know what could have been a place? Radio. The music labels and Universal Music right there, they're missing the boat. I mean, sure, you want to go after TikTok because of their draw, their reach. But this is because you failed, just like the other media companies, to go after the music and get your artists represented and make other mediums still relevant. Radio didn't have to go by the wayside. You're not making enough money off of them. You're not making enough money off of radio. Let's just be clear. Congress is already intervening to try to make several acts to come in, and the Association of Broadcasters, the National Association of Broadcasters, is trying to intervene to keep other Congress people lobbied at bay. You can make a lot of money if you went after radio stations, because then those radio companies that can't afford the money for it, because we've talked about how much they're in debt, those stations will be sold off to other people, and then you would have other people willing to go ahead and pay the licensing fees. Oh, and then you get some money, like the way it used to be. It's your fault to allow that Napster and other places decided to go ahead and create streaming platforms in the first place, so you started getting piracy to lose your value on physical units. That's your fault. So take it and eat that. Eat that loss. Now you're losing again because you did not play ball with TikTok. Now you're going to go ahead and do this deal, which is reckless and foolish. How much more money do you think you're going to get? You think you're going to put this deal on TikTok and you think they're going to take that? Listen, TikTok already shows you. They don't care. They're not Hollywood. You can't push them around. This isn't going to work. When you decided to go ahead and push back on them, Universal Music Group, TikTok said, okay, we're going to give you less than before. I mean, who do you think you're playing with here? You might as well be negotiating with Griselda Blanco or something like that, okay? You're not going to win. This is a mistake. Indie artists might see a bigger winner to get their songs on the short form app, which they are. I hate to tell you this, but that's what's going to happen. What about parody songs from certain artists? They can do that too. What about the artists that decide to go and take a song? Here's the other thing. What about those that decide to do covers of those songs? And maybe those songs do better because we won't even know about the other songs being recorded by the artists that it came from. Are we looking at that? Because you're penalizing the users. You're penalizing the content creators. The creativity. You're taking away from them. Don't think you're hurting TikTok. You're hurting your user base. The people that will be buying your records, you idiots, you foolish twats. One major label employee joked that he could see some people trying to make sound-alike recordings or covers of big songs in hopes of filling the void. Bingo. The risk that Universal Music's gamble is that TikTok fares just fine without its giant catalog, forcing Universal Music and other music companies into worse negotiating positions than ever. It's hard to imagine a comparable user experience with the likes of Taylor Swift, Drake, BTS, The Weeknd, Olivia Rodrigo, and some of the superstars. But this will serve as the ultimate test. And Australia was just the warm-up. Hey, there might be some blowback on TikTok, but you know what? It's not going to lose that much in user base. Not really. I can see it. I can see that. So what are you going to do next? I mean, you got to think about the fact of what you're going to be doing and what happens here. Is this a good idea? I saw this story. This feels like it was being pushed And Universal Music is making a mistake. I believe they are. I've already talked about this before. How much money do you think you're going to be getting extra from TikTok? Okay, 1%. Let me ask you this, all right? Let's go and get to this. I'm going to ask the question now. Radio royalties. I'm going to take a story from Substack, from a site called Money Flow Investing. Now, this story goes back to September of 2022, but there's a lot to say in this story. Let's go and get into it. Universal Music Group monetizes the world's music and serves a crucial role in the music ecosystem. Global leader in recorded music, owns the second largest music publishing company. At its core, the firm develops, acquires, and stewards music IP by funding artists to produce music, purchasing catalogs, and administering copyrights. How much does Universal Music Group get paid? So they own and manage the recording, music, and composition rights. When a person listens to, purchases, or streams the music, the distributor must pay UMG directly or through a collection society. The recorded music and publishing businesses account for 80 and 16% of sales, respectively. A small percentage of revenue comes from selling merchandise through sales channels and touring earnings. This is the makeup of what they're getting their money from. So recorded music and publishing, 80 and 16% of sales. 4% from merch. People consume music in a variety of ways, so interactive platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, or Amazon Music enable consumers to stream music at home or on the go. And these digital service providers pay roughly 70% of their subscription and advertising revenues to labels and publishers. So 50 to 55 cents of every dollar generated to record labels and 10 to 15 cents to publishers. Non-interactive platforms like SiriusXM and Pandora are digital radio applications. They do not allow picking individual tracks. These companies pay less to artists, labels, and interactive platforms. Traditional radio stations do not pay fees for the actual sound recording. This presents a lucrative opportunity for the industry to convert more listeners to streaming since U.S. terrestrial radio accounts for 39% of all music listening hours in the U.S. So 40% of your audience, of your listening habits of your music is in radio. And what are you getting from them in terms of royalties? Customers can purchase physical hot copies in stores or digital downloads on iTunes. This ownership model is still present. It's phasing out the growing popularity and unique value proposition of streaming. Recorded music revenues dropped from 95% in 2005 to 23.5% in 2021. Look at that. 95% to 23%. That's physical units that used to be sold. Not anymore. And the move away from physical ownership is accretive to gross margins, since streaming has margins of 80%, instead of 40 to 45% for physical copies, 70 to 75% for downloads. Local establishments pay labels through performance rights organizations for music performed live or digitally through speakers in malls, shops, nightclubs, and bars. And they license UMG to consumer-facing brands and social networking platforms, enabling partners to leverage its IP to engage with customers more effectively. Now, I wish I had a way of finding out what the money is being made. But global recorded music industry revenues have gone up. The revenue in billions of dollars, by the way. Total physical is $5 billion in music sales. $16.9 billion is on streaming. $1.1 billion is on downloads and other digital platforms. From the performance rights, $2.4 billion. And synchronization, $0.5. Half a million dollars. So overall, when you look at what's going on here, Universal Music, they're not making as much money as they could. And they think that going after TikTok is the way to go. I don't know how that's going to go work out, if that's going to be any good idea. you're not making that much money, and nor are the other record labels making that much money off of TikTok in the first place. Because I'm not surprised if the social media platforms offer less in royalties to them. Like the money you should be making from is from YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Pandora, SiriusXM, and others. Yeah, I believe that. But to do the deal of just pulling the music off the platform, those big music artists, I mean, how good is it going to be for them? Ariana Grande, and I'm trying to think about the fact that, like, what about these artists here and the size of their... Let's see what they are on the TikTok presence, right? I'd like to know this part. How many of these artists right now, what are they going to do here? Like, how many followers do they have? That's the part I want to find out too. Is like, how many do they have of artists that are on here, and how much are they making off of this? Like, I also want to know as well. So I'm going to look real quick and find out what I can find out about this. So let's go and go to this part. Here we go. So what are the artists going to be doing once they see this zip here, right? And they can't do anything about it. Olivia Rodrigo, for example, 209 million likes. So her music is going to be muted on the platform. Let's look at Taylor Swift. 24 million followers currently. Let's look at Drake. I don't know if this is his or not, but, no, I can't. It doesn't look like he's on the account. Okay. Let's look at Ariana Grande and see how big of an audience she has. 34.1 million followers. What are these artists going to do now once their music is on the platform for them to use? What are they going to do next? Ooh, I don't know. It's not smart. And there's a lot of sites that are fan sites and all this that are also part of this with some big followings as well. They're not even part of this now. Justin Bieber, 27.2 million followers. No answer for these artists. No answer. And these are all pretty big artists that are going to be on here. They can't do much. 9.1 million followers for Lady Gaga. Let's go with Billie Eilish. They're all hurting, man. They're all hurting. 51 million followers. What are you going to do next? This is where they'll find less favor in these artists. What happens? So fans react to this. And fans are not happy about this right now. And this is where Universal Music is going to have to ask themselves, are they going to be worried about what happens here and how this is going to turn out? Because this is not going to look well for them. The fans are going to definitely say something about it. Because unlike radio, you're going to hear a lot of feedback from this. So fans are not pleased. On the X account for the Eras Tour for Taylor Swift, they announced that all of Taylor Swift's music, along with other artists under Universal Music Group, has been officially removed from TikTok. And people are already getting on here and complaining. One Billie Eilish fan says, UMG, bring back your shit. I am not fucking around. You ruined my TikTok page. Another, UMG was serious. TikTok silent. Could hear a pin drop. Were we silent or silenced? Another person writes, TikTok should have given UMG a better deal instead of trying to exploit these artists by using AI. Another one, why doesn't UMG let artists decide whether they want their music on TikTok or not? The company has valid concerns. But with that being said, music being on that platform is how some people find songs that they listen to. Correct. So people are already getting upset about this already. It's only going to get worse. And there's no plans to go and do anything about it. to change this up. Tatiana Cinzano writes for Media Research and talks about now that this story and really what is at stake in this showdown. So she writes that the difference now this time is that TikTok is much more about marketing, much more than marketing. It's a form of music consumption in its own right, and one that competes more directly than ever with time spent streaming music. It's been increasingly difficult for TikTok to claim that their exposure is payment enough. This is the so-called value gap between the high amount of music activity on social platforms and their comparatively low contributions to music industry revenue. The ban on YouTube, the debate, and currently about TikTok is setting the tone for the future. As social video continues to grow and constitute its own form of consumption, not to mention becoming a space for fan remixing or recreation, the value gap is widening. Should fan remixes, uses of vocal models, or other emerging use cases be categorized as exposure? The irony is that UMG wins whether TikTok concedes or not. Their grand plan to reassert control over a changing music industry is becoming clearer. Their new licensing regime, while purportedly artist-centric, is really about managing the impact of the fast-growing long tail and the streaming subscriptions slowdown. Whether intentional or not, it will move a new generation of music creators to focus a little bit less of their time and energy on streaming, instead driving them to TikTok and other user-generated content platforms where they can interact daily with their fans. Over time, this turns streaming platforms into hubs for the establishment, while social platforms become hubs for independents, long-tail creators, and other fans to play. Universal Music removing the music only widens the wedge, separating Universal Music and other major artists from the rest of the industry. So even if TikTok does not cave, UMG gets what it wants to draw a line in the sand, but they're going to lose as a result. There's a cost to the approach. Platforms like TikTok are increasingly the spaces where fandom and cultural capital are built, and where new generations consume and create music. UMG clearly recognizes this, and this is why they are seeking to extract greater value from TikTok in the first place. If UMG's absence is prolonged, the current roster of stars will probably be fine. But removing themselves from the pack, the company risks falling out of sync with the next generation of artists and their fans. Right. Artists are collateral damage, according to this article, and you're right. It's true. The sad truth is that artists and songwriters are no better off. Just as with streaming, more money from TikTok could result in meaningful revenue from UMG, but only measly payments for individual artists and songwriters. I'm going to say that one more time because you know what? Tatiana, you put down a money quote. The money quote. This is the most important part of all this. The sad truth is that artists and songwriters are no better off. Just as with streaming, more money from TikTok can result in meaningful revenue for Universal Music, but only measly payments for individual artists and songwriters. Right. The record company makes the money, not the artist. Yep. Huh. Future Music Coalition actually makes the point about this, that independents will not do well for this. If Universal Music Group can't get a fair deal, what hope do indie artists have? Media Research. I got to keep on this site. This is much more interesting than I actually thought, than I give it credit for. So I'm going to bookmark this site right now and keep it on. Another story they got on here, I'll talk about a little bit later, why podcasts may have more in common with TV than radio. Interesting. Well, let's get into the TikTok and finish this up real quick, and then we're going to wrap things up with it. So, all is done. This is unlike the Writers Guild SAG-AFTRA strikes of last spring and summer and fall of 2023. This cannot go long. Universal Music might want to put their line in the sand right now, as we just read. It's not going to bode well, because all these artists right now, they're going to be exposed. Doesn't matter how big these artists are. Let me put it to you like this, Universal Music Group. Would you prefer that the artists have their music be played and at least get some exposure for those artists? Because you know what's going to happen? Those artists are going to get search results for something else. For their controversies. For criticism. Because their music is not on there. And then people are just going to really care about the dirt on all these artists. That's what they'll care about after that. And then what are you going to do? You might want to make more money off of them. But this is the wrong fight. Your fight with streaming is called for. Your fight with YouTube is called for. What you need to do to really make up the amount of money that you're supposed to be getting is radio. Okay. Why don't you, Universal Music Group, why don't you put your money where your mouth is? Why don't you support the local Radio Freedom Act? Excuse me, the other way around. The other one. I should change that. American Music Fairness Act. So to Universal Music Group, I want to give you a message. Instead of going after TikTok and going after this petty squabble, which you were not going to do well by doing this, you go after radio. And how you go for radio is, why don't you go ahead and put your money where your mouth is? Why don't you go ahead and support the American Music Fairness Act? The American Music Fairness Act, okay? Think about it. It would ensure that billion-dollar broadcasters pay their fair share to creators, ensuring that smaller local independent broadcasters are either exempt or pay a small annual fee of $500 or less for the right to play music. A common sense approach. Common sense. Think of the money you'd be making if you put the American Music Fairness Act into play, and how much money that would cause radio companies to pay if that were the case. Ask yourself the question. How much do you think you would be making if you got that much? Because it would be a lot better. Just saying, that's where you need to get your money. You get the royalties off these billion-dollar broadcasters. That's where you get your money back. That'll more than make up what TikTok's not giving you. Okay? Radio needs you desperately. So you bully them. You pick on someone your own size. Quit picking on TikTok. They're too big for you and too powerful. You're not going to play with a new technology and expect to push them around like you think you are. The same music label has been around in existence for 100 years, and you think you can push anyone around. That's not going to work. It's a mistake. It's a big mistake, and they need to get out of that. A few other stories I want to bring up in here real quick. Byron Allen, Entertainment Studios USA fame, also owns the Weather Channel, among other properties. He's made a bid to buy Paramount Global, $14.3 billion, buy all their outstanding shares. He offered $28.58 for each of the company's voting shares, 50% premium compared to recent trading levels, $21.53 for non-voting shares. Including existing debt, the deal amounts to about roughly $30 billion. But yeah, Paramount Global. Paramount Global, because of these sales talks, this bid, the price went up for Paramount up, but like 14%. Went up big. Oh, so it went up 13.5%, according to Bloomberg. Keep an eye on that. The merger might not happen. We might just go ahead and say, oh, no, we're going to go ahead and let Byron Allen go ahead and come on in and take them away. Take it up. YouTube Music has hit 100 million paid subscribers. By the way, we're going to see how big that's going to go, because now that podcasts are going to be much more prominent on that platform. Think about that. Of course, you can find this program and all my programming on YouTube and YouTube Music. Just give you that heads up right now, okay? Even the audio versions you can find on YouTube Music. That's big. So now, podcasting being much more in common with TV than radio. So the story they're talking about now, that parallels with podcasts are striking. We often think about the podcast format as being derivative of radio. For good reason, both involve spoken word audio delivered to a largely lean-back audience, but in truth, it's only the mediums that are similar. The formats are very different. Format-wise, podcasts arguably share more with television and radio, and that can provide some clues to the direction that both formats are heading. Okay, that's interesting. But that's because we're seeing more podcasts being put together looking like a TV show, like a talk show. So why not? You also have another story in here that I got to bring up at some point about podcasts and radio, how radio can play by its own rules. I'm going to hold on to that too. We're going to find a day to go ahead and talk about that story and get into that. I'm curious about that, but we'll not tonight. We'll get into it very soon. All right, moving along. This is a big story tonight in radio from the SEC. SEC Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel. She's preparing a rulemaking authorizing geo-broadcast solutions proposal to allow FMs to use boosters to run geo-targeted content with different portions of the primary station's protected contour. The geo-targeted content, according to other SEC commissioners, would be only allowed for a limited period of time per hour. So, in unanimous and bipartisan vote, the FCC proposed the revised rules to permit broadcasters to originate a limited amount of geo-targeted content from FM booster stations. And since the proposal, small independent broadcasters repeatedly told us that geo-targeting could be a game changer. They said the technology could help them stay relevant and in some cases stay in business, allowing them to offer hyper-localized content over radio, just as TV broadcasters are doing with Next Gen TV. And that geo-targeting can lift small businesses and communities organizations by helping them reach a targeted audience more cost-effectively and reducing barriers to the nation's airways and connecting listeners to the content that matters to them the most. A chance for more live and local content. I like it. I like it a lot. So we got that going on there. That's from the Radio Insight folks. They wrote that. And according to what's being said by Inside Radio, they're saying that this system relies on a network of synchronized FM boosters scattered across the market operating on the same frequency as their primary station. If it's green-lighted, a broadcaster would be able to originate localized content and insert it at specific and limited times on the booster signals while mostly retransmitting the primary station's programming. So think about it like this. Say we have either news or traffic reports, or we have, say, commercials. And you have different markets that are being covered by this. So like, for instance, the Oldies channel, Oldies 95.9, there's like 5 different translators for this station that Vic Canales Media Group owns. So they could go ahead and now put commercials that are or news or information targeted towards the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, or the West Palm Beach area, or the Treasure Coast. 3 different counties, 3 different markets. Interesting. Zone casting. We talked about this before. So they can bring this back up again, and it would be interesting to see how they would work that out. But that's another story I saw. We'll follow that for another day and see what they decide to do. That's the show for tonight. Let me tell you, I am very interested to see what happens right now with this TikTok story. This thing with Universal Music Group, this is bad. This is not a good story right now. Like, these artists are going to get hurt by this. I don't know what they're going to be able to do to be able to get themselves out of all this, and what the fans, what the users are going to say about it. But we're going to keep an eye on this and see what happens. But until then, we'll come back for another Broadcasters podcast next week. And until then, remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.